Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular board meeting of the Goose Creek Board of Trustees to order. The time is 6:03 p.m. Mr. Sampson, was our meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
And for the record, we have 5 members present and 2 absent at this time. Opening exercises will be led by Mr. Matt Flood. Mr. Flood?
Good evening. President Clem, school board members, and Dr. O'Brien, the opening exercises for March 6th Board of Trustees meeting will be provided by the K-Kids from Alamo Elementary School. K-Kids is a service organization for elementary school students. Alamo K-Kids partners with the Baytown Kiwanis Clubs to help students discover their passion to serve, desire to lead, and their ability to engage and collaborate with others to better the school and community. Daniel Ramirez and Jade Garcia will be presenting the pledges. We will begin the opening ceremonies with a prayer led by Mrs. Guy. Everyone, please rise for the prayer and remain standing for the pledges.
Lord, thank you for getting everyone here safely tonight, and thank you for the many blessings you've provided each of us. Please guide our decision-making tonight as we make decisions that will impact the students in our district and the entire community. And finally, please get us all home safely after the meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Thank you. You may be seated. The K-Kids from Alamo Elementary will be performing the Alamo School Song. The students are under the direction of music teacher Emily Gonzalez, PE coach and K-Kid sponsor Amanda Lucas, and principal Miss Leah Abbott.
Thank you very much, students. Do we have parents, grandparents, or other relatives of these students with us? Would you please stand and let us thank you for bringing your kids to entertain us tonight? Thank you.
Great job.
Good job, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good job. Excuse me, Mr. Flood. Did we mention that the principal of the year is here, Miss Leah Abbott, Alamo Elementary principal?
at this time, I will turn it over to Ray Levon for the first set of recognitions and acknowledgments.
Good evening, Dr. O'Brien, Board of Trustees, and thank you, Mr. Flood, for saying my name that fancy. I appreciate that. Feel official. Before we announce our TMEA All-State musicians, I'd like to call your attention to two things. First of all, as you leave, you will see their faces. Every single student that has made All-State in the Fine Arts Department on the digital billboard right there next to the hotel, not the marquee, but the very large billboard. It will be up there for 2 months. So extra special shout out to Ms. Carrie Pryor Newman, Ms. Nima Trujillo for helping with that project and helping to celebrate our students. So we'll do that. Moving right along, can everybody just hold up a number 2? Great, because every single student we're about to name is not a one-time but a 2-time All-Stater in the state of Texas. So we're going to honor 3 students, 2 of which could be here tonight. The first young lady who could not make it this evening is our lone All-State band student, Miss Corinna Levy from Lee High School. So let's give her a big round of applause. All right, and our fantastic All-State choir students, it was so nice they had to do it twice. First, senior Miss Daphne Bailey from Goose Creek Memorial High School. And last but certainly not least, Miss Betsy Carbajal, also from Goose Creek Memorial High School. And they are taught by their amazing choir directors, the incomparable Miss Holly Llewellyn, and the many times imitated and never duplicated Mr. Anthony Rodriguez. Thank you all so much.
All right, our Pathways Academy is a unique leadership development program for classroom teachers who aspire to lead in an administrative role. The program is designed to support the growth of strong educational leadership skills, leading to improved student learning and overall organizational effectiveness. Participants were chosen after an application process which included submission of their resume and quality of responses to essay questions which were scored by a district committee. In addition, selected candidates had to receive a favorable recommendation from their campus principal. Participants engaged in discussions and activities around topics that included instructional leadership, climate and culture, data-informed decision-making, professional learning communities, and preparedness for administrative interviews. We are proud of the work that this group of teachers have done and look forward to seeing the impact they will have as they continue to lead on their campuses in our district. So we have Tori Bernard from Lee High School. Kelly Cogden from Stewart Career Tech High School. Sorry. I thought she was moving that way. Angela Fears from Alamo Elementary. Ann Garcia Smith from De Zavala Elementary. Brandy Greathouse from Highlands Elementary. Noelle Green, Lee High School. Samantha Hernandez, Lamar Elementary. Omar Macias from Alamo Elementary. Kelly Mills, GCM. Tavia Robertson Gamboa from Baytown Junior. Ryan Rogers from CBJ. Dolores Serrano, Carver Elementary. Alexia Schenkel Smith, who is one of our district specialists. Bethany Taylor, Lee High School. Mark Thibodeau from Point. And Elizabeth Thomas from Horace Mann. While we take our last few pictures, I want to just say again, these are teachers who are currently in classrooms, but they've given up multiple afternoons, several hours, to come and spend time with the area executive directors learning about leadership. A great group of students that we had, and we're really very, very proud of them.
I'm sorry, I thought I was waiting on you to tell me. Anyways. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. O'Brien, President Clem. The Goose Creek CISD Community Engagement Department attended the Texas School Public Relations Association TSPRA conference and was proud to announce that we were awarded the Platinum Award for our district brand and marketing campaign, Here We Grow Giants. Yeah. District PR teams from all over the state enter their best work in hopes to earn this top award, and we are proud to report that this year we took it home. Our department received several other honors at the event, including 1 Crystal Award, 6 Gold Stars, 1 Gold Star Best of Category, 6 Bronze Stars, and 8 Silver Stars, which is quite a haul. In addition, Kristen Cathy, our Director of Communications, was pinned in recognition of earning the APR. That is the Accreditation of Public Relations. And so I am proud to introduce our incredible team. Of course, myself, and then Kristen Hunt Cathy, our Director of Communications. Brittany Culpepper, Multimedia Design Specialist. Veronica Dyson, translator. Erica Foster, our Education Foundation Director. Carrie Pryor Newman, Multimedia Production Specialist. Angela Sanders, our Administrative Assistant and the boss of the department. Mima Trujillo, Multimedia Design Specialist. I can't finish announcing this award by also sharing that Dr. Bollinger, former Executive Director of Strategic Planning and Innovation and currently now with Human Resources, contributed to these projects as well. So he deserves a clap. Thank you very much. And we've recruited someone to take a picture.
We are so proud of our Department of Community Engagement as they live up to their title. Thank you very much for all that y'all have contributed towards our brand, which is Here We Grow Giants, being recognized across the state now. Thank you.
This concludes our recognitions and acknowledgments. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Dr. O'Brien and the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. Appreciate you running the opening exercises for us. We are now at the time in our meeting where we will hear from citizens. Citizens' participation is the time that the board will hear public concerns or comments from those who have properly signed up to address the board. At regular board meetings, the board shall permit public comment regardless of whether the topic is on the agenda posted with the notice of meeting. Each speaker is reminded that he or she is limited in his or her presentation to a maximum of 3 minutes. and that he or she should respect confidentiality concerns and refrain from attacking the personal character of any individual student, staff member, or board member in addressing the concerns. Pursuant to state law and board policy BE Legal, the board cannot consider or take action on concerns at this meeting unless they pertain to an item on the posted agenda for this meeting. Any deliberation or decision on an item that is not posted for consideration at this meeting shall be limited to a proposal to place the subject on the agenda of a future meeting. We have one speaker tonight, and that is Rhoda Lawton. Mr. Sampson is our board secretary, and he will time you. He'll tell you when you have 1 minute left and then call time at the end of 3 minutes. And as soon as he finds his timekeeping device, there's one for you. All right, the floor is yours.
Okay, on February the 23rd, my grandson goes to Highlands Elementary. There was an incident at the school, and I sat out in the parking lot and watched the police be very sufficient and circle and circle and circle and circle and circle and circle the school. A few days before that, the police were parked oddly in the front of the school. All right, and then before that, there was an unknown person on the property, and they could not get a response from this person. And my concerns are, my grandson is my life. You know, he is totally everything to me. And I sat out there in that car with several other parents in their cars and wondered if our children were okay. And in this day and age, as it is, these predators prey on the innocent. And I was just wondering what we can do to have armed police officers at the school, at each school, not just my school, for all of the children. Have armed police officers to protect the staff, to protect the children, you know, and know that our children are going to go to school and that they can take care of whatever situation arises, you know, and that's my concern today.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Lawton. We'll work on that administratively. Thank you.
Now we'll move to approval of minutes. I believe we can take February 6th and 20th together unless there's an issue, since we were all present at both of those meetings. I believe I have a motion to approve from Mr. Renteria and a second from Mrs. Woods. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. I see 5-4-0 against. Motion passes. Item 6, discussion item, superintendent's reports. Dr. O'Brien.
Yes, this evening we have 2 superintendent's reports. One will be delivered by Mr. Vaughn, and that is the Ross S. Sterling Band Uniform Replacement. And number 2, 23-24 Budget Overview and Reduction Plan put together by our business department. Mr. Vaughn. We have an expert from the field joining us this evening, Mr. Como. Mr. Gibson.
He's there for dramatic effect. Don't you feel like the perimeter is secure? He's.
Are y'all to run?
No, sir. Because I'm not going to follow the rule. If you run, that means I have to run. So let's not run. Good evening, Dr. O'Brien and Board of Trustees. My name is Ray Lovon, and I'm joined up here with Mr. Brad Como, Director of Bands at Ross S. Sterling, and we're here to speak to you this evening about our band uniform replacement. So this is done on a rotation, and last year we sat before you for Robert E. Lee, where we made a purchase of new marching band uniforms for them for $162,000 approximately. So next in the rotation, of course, is Ross S. Sterling. So our proposed purchase price here is a little over 167. No, I know you're noticing the difference. I can see the look on your face. So we're buying a little bit more uniforms for Ross S. Sterling to allot for growth. So Robert E. Lee bought 275. We're looking at 290 for Ross S. Sterling. Hence the difference. And we're not going to be doing this again until 2026 and 27, and we'll be here for Goose Creek Memorial during that time. So without any further ado, we have sample drawings, and we actually have a model with the sample uniform on. Here is the drawings, but we can do one better. We have Mr. Gahel Toscano, who's going to make a dramatic entrance anytime now. There we go. And this is the sample uniform of the marching band. And here to speak a little bit more about that, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Como.
All right, thank you very much. Like Mr. Levan said, Dr. O'Brien, this is Gael Toscano. He's a sophomore. He's a trumpet player, French horn player, and he is a leader in our band program. We are using an existing company that we used in previous years. I think Mr. Clem used them in previous years, and that's Fruhoff Company. They have been in existence for over 100 years, and they pride themselves on quality, durability, and craftsmanship. So with a rotation being 7 to 10 years, those qualities are vital. So in regards to the design, we are trying to go with a contemporary modular adaptable design, which incorporates classic features. The classic features would be the silver stripe that you see aboard, the buttons, the logo, colors, things like that. It has a classic look, yet modern and contemporary design. The design that's contemporary is the material that is used. The material that was used in the past is it limits the performer in mobility. So the new material, which is a FLX material, it's a flex material, is soft and smooth to the skin. It has moisture transport, and I'll get that to you. I'll describe that in just a minute. And it flexes. It's adaptable. The material will allow the body to move freely without binding or pinching. Current material has to be almost fit exactly, and it prohibits the performer from moving like we should. Marching groups and performing ensembles today are more like Cirque du Soleil on the field nowadays versus the traditional good old days, and mobility is a premier thing we need to focus on. So with the flex material, the fabric, it regulates body temperature in both hot and cold temperatures and controls moisture transport. What that means is the outer layer expands moisture across the surface of the garment, allowing even moisture evaporation. So instead of staying in the small of the back, groin area, armpit area, it evaporates evenly, allowing the body temperature to be cooler and allowing it to be more comfortable. When it's a lower body temperature and sweat is not prohibiting, it moves softly and smoothly across the skin. The inner layer pulls moisture and heat away from the skin. This allows for a lower body temperature and a higher level of comfort. The Under Armour shirt, it's a shirt that goes underneath the vest, and it's a dry fit. So we have two things that we can look at in the summer and the winter. This is a dry fit right now that's moisture control. It's comfortable. It's lightweight. And it's a visual design as well. You have one sleeve that is blue and ambient or gradient, and then you have the other sleeve that is gray. So when a performer is turning to and from, it's a visual aspect as well. Very, very, very super light. In the winter time, we would use more of a compression dry fit shirt underneath that allows to keep the heat in, keep the student or performer more warm, so to speak. We're looking at a new shoe that he's wearing right now from Drill Masters, but we're not decided on that yet. But we have a drop on the side, on his right side. It's a drop cloth. It's just another visual design. You can use a cape. You can use a wraparound. That's just a drop cloth. And we used a gradient design, ambient design, to where the black, we have more gray, but we have black in there, the blue, the gray, the silver, all the things that mean sterling. We have the hat that he is wearing, the shako. We call it a shako. That wrap that's on the top can be removed, and it can be just a classic gray look. We can use that on different games to make something different. It's expandable where it can slip on and pop right on. The plume, currently we use a 14-inch plume. That's a 16-inch plume. Comes with its own case. Super light. 3/4 of the weight of the uniforms we have now is super, super light. I wanted to get the weight for you, but I didn't get to. But again, a great company. Our uniforms are in great condition. They lasted for a long time. We're so glad that we're now getting to get replacement. But Mr. Clem did a wonderful job designing our uniforms and getting to where we are today. And maybe we can just add to what he already started. But that's what I have right now.
Just a point of curiosity more than anything is what
Yes,
happens to the old uniform?
Well, I was kind of wanting to see if I can get approval from Dr. O'Brien or Dr. McCall, and do kind of what Lee's doing and see if we could do possibly maybe throw pillows or something like that, and maybe get that to friends and family and the community. But that's something I know that Lee's doing right now. I hope I'm not speaking, but I think they have approval on that, and it's something I would like to do as well, maybe offer that to our community and our former students and
Very good.
current students.
If he can play taps, he's got my vote.
You can.
Don't put him on the spot. Don't put him on the spot.
I gave you an opportunity.
And now we're seeing a blue uniform turn red. Which is a good segue, because that very blue uniform, if you look at the sample drawing, the drum major is the same version of it, except it's silver. So everything still applies, but just a slightly different color to designate the drum major. So at this point, are there any other questions for myself or Mr. Como?
I'll go last.
I just have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So are all of the fine arts programs on like a rotation for uniforms? Or
Yes, ma'am.
like choir, I know they have the dress.
Yes, ma'am.
So how often do each of those?
All depends. It goes from anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It just depends specifically what you're asking about. I inherited a uniform rotation from my predecessor, so we're just following that to the letter.
Okay. So dance, band, choir all kind of have the
Yes,
same
ma'am.
5 to 7 years?
Yes,
what
ma'am.
about, because cheer's under fine arts also,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
How often do they get new uniforms?
5 to 7. In fact, GCM is up for next year.
Every 15 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
I know better than that. Well, actually, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say.
Yeah,
they
they
do
pay.
get them because they pay
Yeah,
for their
Yeah,
own.
they do.
They're
Exactly.
the only team that gets to pay for their own uniforms. Well, there are some school uniforms that could be.
I'll say this, Ms. Guy. Under my leadership, I haven't had the opportunity to discuss that just yet, because the rotation hasn't fallen just yet, at least on me just yet. So now we're looking at GCM possibly next year, and we're already having those preliminary conversations.
Okay.
All right. Buttons, have you considered the disc of the silver fabric instead of buttons? And let me tell you why. You have no buttons ordered on your order blank, and you're going to need tons of extra buttons. Yes, that's why there are no buttons on your current uniform, because the previous ones, we spent as much in buttons as we did tubas. And just a thought, they may have a better way of attaching them now. They may have, that fabric didn't even exist 10 years ago.
Correct.
So, I mean, I know technology in uniforms has followed all technology, but just knowing what buttons were like in the past, you might look at investigating, asking about that. You can relax, man. We're convinced it's beautiful. Yeah.
He's trained. I'm sorry.
I know he told you get there and don't move, but we're good. Yeah,
That sounds like a man that's been in marching band before.
Yeah.
Don't lock those knees.
Military. Why do we need 290 units? That's a lot.
We need 290 units not only to have our inventory to make sure that we have the variance of sizes over the time because we have
That's
7
still
years.
too many.
Okay.
How
And
many
also
kids
to
did we
allow for
march? How
growth.
many kids did we march at UIL this year in uniform?
I think we had 100 in between 40 and 50, depends.
Okay, so 40% over that's 240, 250?
Yeah,
And you don't need 290 uniforms to cover all the sizes. That's excessive.
Okay. What number would you feel more comfortable with, Mr.
240
Clem?
or 250?
Okay. That's an easy fix.
Because we're asking everybody in this district to pinch pennies, and it needs to start now.
Sure. 250 is fine.
Okay, because, sorry, I know more than I need to know, but we don't need that many uniforms.
Easy enough. Well,
did you really just ask that? Okay. That's all I have.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. You did a wonderful job as a model this evening. Good job. Thank you all.
He told him not to move.
Next up.
There we go. Right there. You got it. No, you didn't. You're gonna. Taking its time. There we go. Thank you. All right. So good evening, President Clem, Board of Trustees, Dr. O'Brien. This evening we're going to talk about a 4-month exercise in budget planning that we have all been involved in. So tonight is the culmination of about 4 months worth of work. And I'd just like to thank everyone who has contributed thus far. And with that, we will jump right into the presentation and agenda. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit about the legislative session, some of the statewide deficits that we've been seeing announced, some of the budget goals we've put in place, staffing, recommendations, and then, of course, the calendar. So, as you know, the legislative session is well underway. We have one very important date that's coming up, which is March 10th, which is the deadline to file bills. So everything must be filed by that point in order to advance. So that's when you really start seeing the action coming on board is once that deadline is hit, you can follow those bills and track them and see where they're going or if they go anywhere at all. So we're keeping an eye on that. As you know, the legislative session has started with unprecedented surpluses for the state to work with, both for gains in property values as well as some leftover ESSER funds and then some other funds as well. Vouchers, of course, has been a centerpiece for the legislative priorities set forth by the governor. And a lot of discussion has gone on around that. But, of course, you know, you're dividing the pie among more entities whenever you put vouchers in place. So there's always that chance that it will divert public funds to private interests. There has also been an enrollment decrease in public education. We have just over 5 million students enrolled in the state of Texas in public education. And we're seeing about a 2% contraction that's projected to happen over the next couple of years, just decreases in numbers. And then just so you understand some of the rhetoric that's going around about Texas spending more money per pupil than it ever has historically, and that That's technically true, but if you adjust it for inflation, they've actually spent less. And according to a study by the National Education Association, we're 42nd in per pupil funding as of 2021 school year. So just so you're informed as you hear the politicians talking about these items. As mentioned, some of the districts across the state are already announcing and signaling that they're going to have budget deficits they're going to be struggling with as they prepare their budgets for this year. Of course, HISD being in the news as of late for other reasons. They're showing a $217 million deficit. And then, it goes on down to, even Plano having almost $39 million deficit. So, and this is early on. We're only in the beginnings of March. So a lot of them are holding their budget numbers close to their vest and not really showing their hand right now. But we expect to hear more as we get further down the road in the budget season. So some of our goals that we set forth is, as you've heard us discuss, the glide method, which is because the way we've managed our reserves and our ESSER dollars, we're able to use some of our reserves to that end while still being well in compliance on our fund balance policies. Also, we step forth with central office and support budget reductions first. We're also instituting the glide method on staffing guidelines, and Dr. Bollinger will get into that a little bit more later in this presentation. We're also avoiding any reductions in force. That's why we started this budget planning process in November. So it's been a long planning process, and lots of meetings and lots of hours have been dedicated to this. So, and we're going to avoid that reduction in force. And we're also, of course, exploring any other district-wide efficiencies that we could capitalize on at this time. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Bollinger to discuss staffing.
Okay, I'm going to start with the second slide and then come back to the first. So why are we having to go through a budget reduction process? There's several contributing factors that Bridget alluded to. One, of course, is statewide, nationwide enrollment declines, and also a decline in ADA. But beyond that, it's primarily due to COVID. COVID is a major contributing factor. We know a few years ago when we went through COVID, and it's hard to really go back to that moment, but when we were going through COVID, we know it was a very difficult time. And nationwide, there were funds allocated. Those ESSER funds were allocated to school districts across America to address learning loss. And so we were worried about instructional time. We knew that many students had high levels of absences. Our teachers had high levels of absences for 2 years. We had issues with social emotional concerns that were being addressed. We had attendance factors. There was a lot of resources and support and staffing that were addressing something we've never been through before. So now that we're coming out of the woods in that regard, we're having to make adjustments with our staffing. And so that's one of the reasons why we had excessive staff, is because we had many staff on board to address the concerns at the time. And so again, now we're making those adjustments. Also, during the last 2 or 3 years, we've opened several facilities. We've opened Pumphrey Elementary, Lyles Early Learning Academy. We have opened Green Junior School. And with new schools, we know comes new operational costs and also new staff. But as certain students were rezoned and moved from one school to another, we also were more flexible than we normally would have been before pre-COVID, due to those reasons, because we did not want some of our campuses to take a huge hit. We wanted to ease the burden, so to speak, as we were going through opening new facilities, and then also navigating the pandemic. So like it says on that second bullet, due to these circumstances, our current staffing has exceeded our staffing guidelines. And so this is not the only reason why we're going through a budget reduction process, but this is one of the main reasons. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. Over the last 4 years, just to give you a snapshot, we've added over 400 positions to the district-wide. You can see that the largest category there is teachers. And again, as we open new facilities, we add teachers, and we didn't make the adjustments we normally would make for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Also, we added positions just dealing with what's going on in current times and with mandates. We know that social emotional learning is a huge component of Texas education. So we've added positions to to meet and service that need. We know that safety and security, especially after Uvalde, we heard it tonight, in citizens' participation is high on the list of priorities. And so we've added positions in the term of security officers, police officers, and then we've also added several layers of instructional support to address some of the instructional concerns. We know with House Bill 4545, when that came on board, that we had to add additional positions to service that mandate as well. And so all of those items combined are some of the staffing issues that we're now facing. Okay, so we'll talk more beyond staffing, but to talk about staffing, in a nutshell, we've revisited our staffing guidelines that we pushed the pause button on during COVID. We revisited those staffing guidelines, and we have a staffing guidelines committee that's met several times to go back over and look at how we're staffing our campuses, just to make sure that we're staffing in a way that is financially sustainable over the next few years. So we want to make sure that again, we're not spending more than we're taking in. And so we're making adjustments with staffing. As Ms. Clark mentioned, we're using the glide method. So this year we'll make a staffing adjustment, and then we'll also look at staffing next year as well as other programs to make sure that we're servicing our top priority programs and then operating in a very lean manner, again, to make sure that we're financially sustainable. Also, Ms. Clark mentioned it, but I do want to reiterate that no one is losing their job as we go through and reduce vacancies. We're not doing a reduction in force. Our model is the attrition model. So we know that as we have certain vacancies that occur due to resignations or due to retirements, then if that position is deemed as excessive staff, we just won't fill for that vacancy. And so our plan is to operate in that manner over the next 2 years to get back to the staffing that we had pre-COVID. And so that's really what our goal is when we talk about staffing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bollinger. Does anyone have any questions thus far? Yes. Sure. Okay, absolutely. All right, so this slide is as of today, and you'll see you've seen this slide before. One thing that is different is that as of today, we haven't quite gotten to the $9 million deficit number because we're not finished. We're only, on March 6th, so we're still plugging along, and I'm sure I'll get lots of applause, but we'll be meeting again this week. So. On the budget. I mean, the work just continues, and it will continue. So this is where we are right now. Fortunately for our district, and the way we've planned our financial expenditures over the last few years and how we've managed our ESSER funds, you can see we have 29, even with the $12 million, even if we were to leave it at $12 million, we'd still have an additional $29 million in reserve. So you can see here we have a good, we have a nice cushion. We don't want to, we want to remain fiscally conservative with that, of course, for multiple reasons, including our proximity to the coast and concentration in oil and gas industry. But we do have ample reserves, and we are continuing to put pencil to paper. And so you'll see in the next slide, what some of those line items might look like. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. All right.
Okay, so just to give an idea of the budget reduction process, the goal is to reduce our budget by $14 million, a little over $14 million, and that would leave us with a $12 million deficit for this next year. Last year, whenever Ms. Clark and her team were presenting over the budget, they addressed that this would be a deficit year the following year. So that's where we're sitting now. So it wasn't a surprise. We knew that this year would be a deficit, and we knew that using the glide method, it would take 2 years to pass a balanced budget with the staffing and programs that we have in place. And so what we've done as a team is gone through and looked at programs, and we've looked at staffing, and we've made reductions based off of percentages. And so if it's a 20% reduction in one area or a 30% reduction in another area, that's really been our model. If we were to go back and take a very strict approach to our staffing, for example, then our that number that says 7.5 million would probably be closer to 11 million if we were to take a very strict stance. But we also don't want to cut our campuses legs out from under them. And so again, when we're looking at a 2-year approach, we want to make sure that we're being sensitive to that fact. And so this is a spreadsheet that shows the areas of consideration in programmatic or staffing reductions based off percentages to hit the goal that we're trying to hit.
And so this slide is just showing the budget calendar and the steps ahead. The next meeting is on April 3rd. And that is when we will start. Once we get past this part, we may bring, there's a possibility we may bring some more budget reductions to you. And also we'll start talking about compensation plans. That's an awfully tall fourth grader, isn't it?
Well, there's always one. Mr. Renteria? Sure.
Yes, ma'am. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to get to the number 14,392,000 by reducing each of these by that much?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, the lion's share of it is applying the staffing guidelines, and then the central admin cuts are the largest ones. Yeah.
So over 80% of our budget is personnel. And so we know that whenever we make reductions, primarily it's in that area. Also, we know, looking at our staffing, not just at campuses, but also in every area, that due to the past 3 years, we are overstaffed. And so the goal is to make adjustments in staffing. It's not cutting below where we were. It's going back to where we were with an equal ratio towards the number of students that we have, to make sure that what we put in place is financially sustainable.
So I think it's important to share that the staffing ratio that hasn't been mentioned is the guidelines set out by the Texas Education Agency. That would be 30 students per teacher per classroom for secondary, and then 22 students per teacher per classroom for elementary. Goose Creek has never been to the max that TEA says you can on that, for the obvious reason: the smaller the class count, the greater the learning opportunity for the child. So while we've had district standards in place for years, during COVID, to Dr. Bollinger's point, we were flexible with those rigid numbers. Even when we set it, in order to calculate the budget, it has to be a set number. So do you want to share those numbers from the past and the current?
Sure, I can share what we're going to. Is for elementary, there hasn't been a huge impact. We're at 22 to 1 for younger grade levels, and then 25 to 1 for fifth grade, and it's always been in that place. And we had a little flexibility, but we're very close already. At secondary, that's where we tend to be more overstaffed at our secondary schools. And previously it was 27 to 1 and 29 to 1 for non-Title I campuses, 27 to 1, 27 students per teacher at the junior school, and then 29 students per teacher at the high school. And we've softened that a little bit to about 24 to 1 is what we're implementing. And by implementing that, we will not feel a little over 100 teachers district-wide, and that will be some savings in that area. But our class size ratio will still be below the state requirement.
Significantly below, so.
Can you go back to the budget? I guess I can.
Yes, sir. This one?
Yeah, so
Yes, sir.
our overall budget, is it 259?
That is, yes, sir. That is correct. Yes.
And I got another question, I guess.
Turn your mic on.
On instructional coaches. Why do we have those? Does TEA require us to have instructional coaches? And what are they for? Right. So they're instructing the teachers, not the students?
They do some of both, and it's all paid out of our Title Money or state
curious because I saw that, and with the teacher, what is it, 7.5 million that we're cutting for teachers? So, is it possible that they play more of a role as teachers because we're going to be losing?
Well, they're specifically told what they have to do by guidelines from the state or the federal.
Okay.
So those are to improve instruction. So work sometimes with the teachers, with the students, but it's about not more than 40%.
And what's the budget for that?
That's what we use our federal funds and
Okay.
state comp part.
I was looking more
Yeah.
for numbers, but
Yeah.
that's fine. I understand. So, okay, let me see what else I got here. You said we can make amendments or adjustments to this if we need to? Or when we
That's
come
your
back?
yes, sir. We can bring it back if that's
Up until June 30th.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
yes.
For teachers, so just looking at teachers, in general, we're at about a $63,000 mean across the board for teachers.
A little bit more, I think, but yeah, somewhere around there, about
And it's
65.
About nine and a half million for teachers alone, for the 150 teachers we got.
Yeah, it's 7.5, almost 7.6.
Okay.
And it averages about 3 per campus, about 3 teachers per campus. But we know that it'll be much higher at the secondary level, much lower at the elementary level, just because of how we're currently staffed. We're trying to bring more consistency to how we're staffed right now because certain campuses are staffed very closely to our previous staffing guidelines just because of how things fell, and certain campuses are not. So we're making those adjustments.
And does that include the librarians, or that's not a part of that?
Librarians are a separate item, and we're looking at, based off of elementary enrollment, either doing a 0.5 librarian where there's going to be a shared librarian with a librarian aide or a CTS serving as librarian aide for our smaller campuses, and then a full librarian for all of our other campuses is the proposal.
It's hard, it's hard to see that we're not going to cut anybody because y'all said we're not cutting anybody.
We have about 300 plus teacher resignations over the summer, and so we're trying to cut 108, and so that's
So let me just ask you
that one.
because I know where you're going. I would say, so we're not going to tell somebody, well, you didn't make the cut.
Right.
It's just not, you're not coming back because we're not going to renew your contract. But
No.
okay.
No,
This is
that's
for
not.
resignations.
Yeah.
I understand how
Only.
attrition works. I'm just asking
Yes,
this
sir.
question.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Yes.
So no one will lose their employment due to this process.
Right.
They will continue to have a job, even if we have to grandfather certain positions where you'll remain in that position until there is a vacancy. We're using the attrition model, so
Right.
So our staff will continue to be employed because this is not performance-based decision. It's based off of reducing vacancies or closing out vacancies.
So since you're the chief financial officer, this is for you.
Yes, sir.
Would you say that we're living within our means as a school district?
We've probably lived, added teachers because we've had to comply with 4545 and we've had to contend with learning loss and all of those things. And so were we right-sized for the situation? Absolutely. We did what was right for kids. But now we're getting back to the new normal. And now when you get back to the new normal, you kind of have to right-size, your staff too. Now, are all those pressures going to go away? Absolutely not. I saw some of the highest turnover rates in teachers nationally, an article that came out today. Yeah, and it's not going away. It's going to continue. So there's still going to be competition trying to get, highly qualified educators to your district and to retain them and make sure, students are educated with the most highly qualified. But it's just a contraction process. Plus, the entire state is losing enrollment in public ed, so that's going to add more pressure. So we're all going to see systematic contraction. So we just need to make adjustments, and that's why we started so early. I mean, we started in November because this is difficult to do it this way by attrition and make sure people are placed appropriately and make sure everyone is, in their right spot. So it's an arduous process, but it's the right process, I think. Yes.
Okay, one last hard question.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you feel that you cut adequately from the top to the bottom and fairly from top to the bottom?
Yes, sir. I do. I think we have looked at every position. I mean, we're looking at everything across the board. So, we went a little softer on teacher ratios because we don't want to shock, the classroom. We want to make as few cuts as we can to adjust for that. But at the same time, we still have to make those contractions.
And since you mentioned staffing, I think it's also worth noting, we offer an early retirement resignation bonus, and that deadline's coming up. But we've had almost 60 teacher/nurse resignations or retirements as a result of that early deadline. So that also helps us to project how we're going to staff, and it helps the principals to know what their staffing is going to look like as well.
Thank you for answering those questions.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Very good questions.
They are, and I just wanted to make note that you drew attention to the teachers being the most. They're also the most employees that we have. They're half of all employees are teachers, so 2,000 are right around there.
All right, if we could go to the forward one slide.
This one? Or,
no, the
or
other
this
direction.
One?
The other forward.
Oops.
Some of you will remember that one, because I like your shirt. Some of you will remember at convocation I talked about blowing your own horn. And the third line down is elected leadership operational budget reductions. That's us. And I've been here a long, long time and never seen that happen before. But we're cutting money.
We're not getting a raise?
We are not. We're going to double our own
10%.
salary, but we're still going to cut our budget. No, we're going to double our salary. Our salary is 0 if you don't know that. Just in case. Yeah. But we really are reaching everywhere. Now, could we go to slide 7, I believe, which is about staffing?
Also wanted to make note, Mr. Clem, that you made a very good point. I think our ranges in reduction are from 10% up to 30%, and that reduction by the board was 30%.
Yeah.
And so kudos to you for acknowledging that you're a part of the cut process.
It's all of it. We're all in this together. On this slide, obviously the teachers are pretty explanatory, but and auxiliary is, but of the aides, professional staff, central admin, and maybe even some teachers, is that numbers that we pay for out of our 11 function or 11 budget, or some of those numbers part of the federal funding?
This is all staff, but it has all populations as well, all special pops.
Okay, some of those numbers may be re-upped because they're funded not from our general fund.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, because if we lost every one of those positions, we'd have a surplus budget.
Right.
Okay. Now, those of you who are really, really concerned, Mr. Renteria, I used the same $63,000 figure you did. $7.5 million of teacher salaries is 119 people, point something. And like Dr. Bollinger said, that's 3 or so per campus. And where I'm heading with that is, have we already had staffings with principals and forecast numbers for next year?
Sure, I can answer that. And the number we used for salary was 70,000, so it came out at about 108, but it won't be exactly that. So
I wasn't even counting benefits package. Just a ground figure. But I've mentioned to both of you individually and private that I've read to a lot of schools this year and a lot of classes, and I've been to a lot of classes, all levels, with 12 and 15 kids in it. So I'm asking the staffing question because if we get those 15s to 19 or 20 and not head to the 22 all at once, which I know is the plan, but have we had those meetings and really identified this is the position on, I'm just going to pick Asheville Smith because it started with A. These are the positions we're not going to replace if we lose them to attrition.
Yeah, those meetings happen. They start this week. We start with elementary.
So we're just now to that.
And our directors will meet campus by campus to walk them through their staffing projections and what their staffing looks like. And so those meetings are starting this week with elementary and junior school, and then they'll continue after spring break that next week.
Okay. You answered a question which we, based on up to today, I suppose we've had about 60 resignations or retirements to get the early incentive. Historically, do you know approximately how many we get after spring break until the deadline to resign?
So you're not talking about for the early retirement bonus, but
right,
until the deadline?
After that.
So over the last 3 years, that number has gone up quite dramatically. A lot of it has to do with the nationwide teaching shortage. Mm-hmm. And so this year, we're not sure if it's going to follow that same trend. Last year, it was around the 300 mark.
So we should have no trouble hitting our mark there.
Correct.
Okay. What other places have we not hit the cut we originally asked for? Besides staff.
Back to that slide.
Yeah.
Which one?
This one? That one. Yeah.
Okay.
Where in this have we not reached our goal yet?
So I would answer that there are certain positions and certain programs that we're still discussing and deferring to next year to make decisions for next year. So we know this is a 2-year plan. And so if we're able to cut, the goal is to get to a $9 million deficit or 17 million reduction. So if we're at 14 million, next year we're having the same conversation. So whatever we don't cut this year, we'll have to cut next year, or we'll have to reduce next year. And so I think there are certain positions and programs that are on the fence that we're continuing to talk about to decide
so
how
when
to
I
address
made
those.
a comment that this is a work in progress, that is absolutely what it is.
100%.
Okay. I know a senator from Conroe made a comment today about how much he would like to see added to the basic allotment, and I know he has to get a majority of the Senate and the House to agree with him, but that would wipe out, what, $6.5 million or so?
Did he give us a number of three?
I don't want to say a number out loud because I've done a lot of reading today.
I know.
At my age, sometimes numbers do this.
Yeah.
But
it makes a good point to do the slide method. Instead of trying to get to our number in 1 year, we could realize a revenue benefit over the next year.
We may not be
through the
having this
legislative
conversation in June. It's the reality.
Yeah, I mean, if we get a substantial increase, that could certainly offset some of this deficit.
I'm going to steal Mr. Renteria's lead into his last question. For my last hard question, in a moment we're going to be asked to approve a budget reduction plan. Is that really necessary? I think we've all endorsed this by our conversation. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that needs an approval because other than for us to collectively say we're behind you. And
right.
Is that the purpose?
It was just to solidify the plan and just, put your approval on record. But certainly if there were any changes that you all wanted to make to this, or if you wanted us to bring it back.
Right. It's just endorsing the process up to this point and adjusting is necessary moving forward.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Anybody else? All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Speaking of action items, Dr. O'Brien, 7A consent agenda.
Yes, we have several consent agenda items to bring before the board for approval this evening. 7A1 is to approve the 23-24 budget reduction plan as presented up until this point. And 7A2, a uniform purchase for Ross S. Sterling High School Band. Number 3, pre-K rezoning boundaries. Number 4, adoption of amended election order for a Board of Trustees election for single-member districts 3, 6, and 7 for May 6th, 2023. Number 5, order of cancellation election, declaring an election of trustee and single-member district number 7. Number 6, tax refunds. And number 7, budget amendments as presented. Administration would recommend approval for the consent agenda.
All right. Would anyone like to pull an item or ask clarifying questions? And I'm going to obviously pull item 2. Yes, sir. Any more? Ms. Clark, if we were to change the uniform purchase amount, would we need to change the budget amendment now or do it at a future budget amendment? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So I seek a motion concerning items 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
I'll move to approve.
Have a motion for Mrs. Guy and a second for Mr. Renteria to approve consent agenda items A1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. I see 5, 4, and 0 against. That motion passes. On item number 2, this is concerning the band uniforms. I would make a motion that we approve up to 250 units of band uniforms and 10 units of drum major, plus the sundry equipment requested. Have a motion from myself and a second from Ms. Woods. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Seeing 5, 4, 0 against, that motion passes. Pre-K rezoning, Mr. Sampson.
Mr. Sampson, would you like for the team that put this together to come up to be able to answer your question? Mr. Walterside?
That would help.
Mr. Flood? Dr. McCall?
I'm confused. Pre-K. Really? So, explain to me how much of a change is this going to make for the rezoning of the pre-K? Is that going to increase some schools, decrease?
So this came about, of course, because we're bringing Hopper on. We're bringing pre-K back to Hopper.
Okay.
As you know, this year, students that live in the Hopper zone are going to Pumphrey for pre-K. And so currently, half of Hopper is under construction to add those learning experiences. And so we'll have a capacity of about 152 students there.
Right.
So it's really bringing pre-K back to that community. And so we are... that's the whole reason for the rezoning. And so students who live in that Hopper area or in Highlands area will go to Hopper. And so what we did was group elementary zones so that way we could meet the capacity and still leave a little room for growth, because as you know, we've seen a pretty drastic growth in our pre-K numbers since going to this model.
Okay, so, excuse me, Harlem has a pre-K. So would their boundaries change? Or Hopper's the only one?
Yeah. So Harlem, if you are in the Harlem zone, you're still going to be going to Pumphrey Elementary for your pre-K next year.
Okay.
The campuses that will be going to Hopper will be those that are in the Travis zone and Highlands Hopper zone.
Okay. Just wanted to get that in my mind, because this map got all these little buildings. That's it. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Sampson, would you make a motion concerning item 3?
I make a motion that we pass item 3, pre-K rezoning boundaries.
I'll second.
Have a motion from Mr. Sampson and a second from Mrs. Guy to approve the pre-K rezoning boundaries as recommended. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. I see 5, 4, 0 against. Motion passes. Future board agenda items. Before the entire cabinet disappears, I know we have these conversations about band uniforms from time to time, but why don't we have the same conversation about choir robes and uniforms and cheerleader uniforms and football uniforms and track uniforms? Why don't we ever see that? That's just one somebody can email me an answer to.
Don't they come up periodically?
I brought it up last meeting
football
about
and
cheerleader.
Yeah.
Choir and all
Well,
that.
and yeah, I think we should be visiting all of that because I know
Levon
those are
said he was,
all
Mr. Levon said he was working on it. Didn't you tell me that?
Levon.
This guy here. That's not the way you pronounced it earlier. You said Levon.
It's Ray Levan.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that. And his pink tie and yeah. Any other future board agenda items? Trainings. Many of us just got back from a great winter governance camp, and some of you are going to the National School Board Association meeting, I guess, before our next meeting. And I hope you have a great time and learn a lot.
I'm going to this.
We do need to check our calendars and reschedule the April 3rd meeting for April 10th. If everybody could check your calendar and let's discuss that for a moment, because folks going to the National School Board meeting will not be home till April the 3rd late at night, so we would not have a quorum. So is everybody good with the 10th? All right. Do we need to do that as a motion or? Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to move the April 3rd meeting to April 10th.
I'll make a motion to move the April 3rd meeting to April 10th.
Second.
A motion from Mrs. Guy and a second from Mr. Renteria. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. That means you're coming. Motion passes. The script. I should have this memorized by now, but I don't. The board will now recess into a closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code sections 551.71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 082, 83, 84, and maybe even 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed meeting, and the time is 7:20. We will now reconvene into open session. The time is 7:52 p.m. and no decisions were made while the board was in closed session. Action item E, consideration of personnel. Dr. O'Brien.
Yes, this evening we have administration brings before the board approval of elections as presented and accept resignations and retirements as presented as well.
I'll move to approve.
A motion from Mrs. Guy and a second from Mr. Renteria to approve elections, resignations, and retirements as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Seeing 5-4-0 against, motion passes. And item 8, adjournment. The time is still 7:52 and we are adjourned. Yay. That's the fastest personnel ever.